as you already know, the new president, President Bola Tinubu, is trying to set up his cabinet. While a lot of people applauded, people in retrospect have remembered the past administration and the relationship between the media and the presidency. Well, how is it going to be this time? Are we going to see reeled out the successes, the activities of governance properly managed with the media? We saw last time some rifts between the government and some media organizations. The president has just appointed a new media and publicity as SA, that's the special assistant.
Special advisor.
Special advisor, I beg your pardon. Are we going to see a difference? As he has also promised that there would be. That is what we'll be discussing on this segment of the program. And to do justice to this and how we can better the synergy is our in-house analyst, Lois Sambo. So good to have you join us.
Thank you very much, Joy. Thank you very much, Ifuna. It's nice
love
being
when
here.
You're behind the chair. I'm usually behind the camera, so when you're in front of it, it's fun having you here.
Yes.
I listened to his speech early this morning, actually, around maybe 4 a.m. Well, I think it was a repeat I was watching. I'm trying to pronounce his name. Ajuri Ingalale.
Ingalale.
Ajuri Ingalale. I love his name. It sounds very foreign. Anyway, and I as a broadcaster, I had goosebumps listening to it, because for the first time we're hearing the kind of language that the media wants to hear.
Yes.
Now, I recall some of the achievements. We've had several guests on this program, and then one of the things one of our guests said, several of our guests, were the achievements that APC had done under President Muhammadu Buhari. Unfortunately, he didn't have good media representation, so the Nigerians themselves did not understand what was going on. So when Aguri said it today, that there would be an open door policy, and it's not a privilege but the right of every Nigerian to have access to the president, to have access to the vice president, to know what the government is talking about, then they must have a cordial response from the government. What's your thought on that? Let's start with that.
So for us journalists, and I say that, for us journalists, you know, our experiences with SAs is not only even to SA medias, to the president's ministers, you know, DGs. It hasn't always been very smooth.
Okay.
And let's even talk about the presidency. You see SAs talking down at journalists. You see SAs. It seems like it's a war between SA medias and the media organizations. It always looks like media wants to bring down this government, so we're not going to let you. There's always an exchange of words.
Animosity.
You know, there's so much animosity. It's like, if I see you, and if I see you, you're not so good to us, and all of that. But it's good, just like you said, him speak and say that in this government, no government, the presidency will not take it tolerant, will not be tolerant towards any government official that speaks down on Nigerians, online or offline, that speaks down on the media. And that is what we want to hear. That, for us, is beginning to look like something we would call transparency. So I could ask you, no matter how difficult the question is, and you have an answer for me. That's how it's supposed to be. And sometimes it just looks like, I've had people that say media people are government destroyers, and I'm like, no, our job is actually to be watchdogs of course. We are the watchdogs. We see, we ask, you give us answers. If you are transparent on what you're doing is good, you shouldn't have a problem. That's
exactly.
it. That's it.
But this special advisor, this particular one, that's Ajuri Ngalale,
yes,
has the media background, and I know that in the past administration, he worked in that capacity. We had him here on
we had him here
once or twice, and he has been fantastic in relating with the media. There was no such thing that was off the table with him. But do you think it will have this influence? It's, again, you know, when politicians speak, in as much as he has the background, we are usually a bit weary about their statements. Do you think this government would indeed implement that, where an open door, proper open door, Lois, you know exactly what I mean when I say a proper open door policy? Do you think it will be enacted in all the ministries, departments, agencies, and all the heads of the many stratas of government?
Now, when you talk about with other MDAs, it may not be necessarily like that, because if you don't have someone that has this kind of perspective, there's nothing you can do about it. But for him, one, he's heading that for now, and it looks encouraging. So it almost looks like whoever it is that would work with him would have no option that to work with that directive.
I love that part.
Do you understand?
Yeah.
So for the presidency, we're hoping that it works out. Then it could only be that we should do more advocacy for heads of ministries, departments, and agencies to make sure that their media representatives are friendly to the media and know their job and do their job right. Because if you do your job right, in fact, there's nobody that will blow your horn for you as much as the media would. The reason why you see negative stories is because you're making it look like there's something you're hiding.
You're hiding. Yeah.
So I ask you a question and you tell me, this media people, why are you asking me this question? But there is the Freedom of Information Act. Why shouldn't we ask you? And your government officials, we are supposed to ask you because it is your responsibility. You are in there to do that job. And if you're not doing it well, we have the right to ask you why you're not doing it well.
I want to bring our former, I want to bring in our former Minister of Information, Lai Mohammed. And of course, there were so many jokes and caricature around him.
Yes, and his name as well.
And his name as well. If you look at Femi Adesina, Garba Shehu, there are so many comments that came out from government, and we as broadcasters or journalists felt you shouldn't respond. It's not every dog that barks that you stop and throw a stone at, but they were always throwing stones for a fly that is passing, they want to kill it. And sometimes you find out that the people who are supposed to be sensitive to the kind of languages they use in translating or responding to legitimate queries or worries of Nigerians, they don't use appropriate languages. And Ajuri, I need to get to the
Yeah, Ajuri
is Ngalele. Where is he from?
River State.
That's a river. You know so much, Joy. Anyway, so Ngalele, I like the name. It's a nice name. Anyway, Ngalele is coming out to say and then giving his marching order. Do you think that body language would also translate to his subordinates? Do you think, or should we also be expecting that kind of message that he's passing out about, a friendlier relationship with the media from whoever, becomes the Minister of Information? What role do you think both of them, as a special advisor, publicity and media, and whoever the minister is going to be, what kind of synergy should we expect that would actually help drive government policies?
So when we say government is one. The entire government of Nigeria, it doesn't matter how many people are working, in the government. So it's very important that they all work in synergy. It's very important that we cross-check before we even... There is no rush in life. There is one thing I learned during COVID. There is nothing that cannot stop. If COVID could happen and everything could be shut down, then nobody's going to die. If we don't release a press statement, immediately something happens. They should be able to call and ask, what's happening here? Okay, let me get this facts right before we go to the media with it. One of the reasons why we're having so many of these issues is you don't get facts right and then you just go on. And then somebody comes and says another thing and it looks like we're contradicting. It looks like we don't know what we're saying. So if from the head they don't get it right, they say once the head of the fish is rotten, the entire body is rotten. Yeah. So once they don't get it from the head, the entire system is spoiled, So just like I said, it is very, very important that they work in synergy. Ministers have just been screened, and we're hoping in the next 1-2 weeks, portfolios would be assigned. And we hope that whoever will be given Minister of Information, Culture and Tourism should be someone that is also in this line. We've all constantly spoken about having round pegs in round holes, because this person knows how to do this. And just like you said, Anjiri has the background, and that is why it is not a surprise that he comes out and says what he says and in the manner in which he says it, because he is informed. He knows how to go about it. He knows that for us to be able to get this right, we need to have the media working with us. The media must not necessarily be on their side, but understand, the media terrain in Nigeria, understand how to treat them. It's not only in Nigeria, worldwide. If you look at Donald Trump when he was president of the United States of America, he was constantly having issues because of his approach towards the media. And it wasn't necessarily that bad. It's just as simple as if we ask you a question, if I don't have an answer, I tell you, I refrain from answering that question. It's as simple as that. Nobody will kill you. But there is no need now, because they ask a question and you feel you don't have an answer, or then you back at this person, or you know, it doesn't make sense.
Exactly.
It just makes the
We don't
situation
want to hear
worse.
people asking the media who, I mean, when we ask questions like who's bankrolling you, we don't want to have uproars around it. Let's look at the new media. Social media has been a tool for disseminating information. I bet sometimes also misinformation or disinformation. Do you think that
Ajuri. Yeah, we can just work with Ajuri.
Ajuri, I want to get the whole Ingaleli. So do you think we can, do you think that with Ajuri being there right now, right, that we might see a lot more information from the government on social media platforms? Because we've not really had that robust. Of course, we've had presidents with social media pages, all of them. Femi Adesina had his own page. You know, so many of the media officials with the past president had social media pages, but not the kind of information that Nigerians were expecting to get, not the kind of language that is social media friendly. Because once you just use one word, everybody comes there, they are tearing you apart and they're fighting, and it triggers more. You see a lot. I think it's actually on social media that you see this unity in Nigeria in terms of tribe, in terms of religion, in terms of culture. You know, do you think him being younger, him being more open to social media might also help reduce disinformation and misinformation about the federal government?
So I'd like to take it back from the kind of language used.
Yeah.
And so the president just released his broadcast the day before yesterday.
On Monday.
And if there is one thing people always said about the president, was his speeches were always good and on point.
Yes.
They always touched the issues, always try to show empathy.
Yes.
You know, so no matter how much, and you know, no matter how much one wants to criticize what the president does or says, whenever the president comes on a broadcast, and this is his second broadcast since being president,
yes.
and all the time, no matter how much of a critic people are, they always said his speeches were always
calming.
good. Yes, they were always calming.
You can see
so we're
empathy
already
through them.
yes. So we're already seeing something that looks like what people may want to accept. So the only skepticism people now have is, these broadcasts are good, they're calming, we just want to see action attached to it. So if once action is attached to it, it settles everything. Do you understand?
Does it?
So no, once action is attached to it, what Nigerians want is
Because
action.
I know
Yes.
where I'm going with this. You and I have also seen cases where very reputable media organizations seem like they are attacking and not necessarily going into the facts, in spite of efforts by government. So feeling that animosity between the animosity between the government and the media. We've seen cases where you ask yourself, is this a journalist trying to get facts for the people, or a journalist who wants to attack and rubbish the activities of government? So even in spite of the effort, we don't see that.
Okay.
We see that attack as well. While we can sit here, we are all journalists, so it's only right that we would defend the profession that we practice. We have also seen journalists being complacent as well.
Okay, so let's talk about, like you said, there's some media organizations that looks like they're attacking. Let's talk about previous administrations and media representations of these administrations. It's just like Ifunaya said, it looks like there is, and like I said as well, there is animosity. So if I ask you a question and you react in a certain kind of way, I automatically also react in that kind of way.
But you
And
do
so
know
it
there are some
begins to
questions
look.
I will ask you that
so
will
it
be
begins
very
to
inciting.
Well, just like I said,
But
if I
your
ask you
media,
and it
you're
looks
meant to
like
ask
that's
those
what I'm saying.
questions.
So if it looks like it's inciting, if you have the right answer, you give me the answer and we're done.
Exactly.
But the moment you begin to back at me, it now makes me feel there's something you're hiding. And because of that, I will poke at that thing to find out. Because the job of the media is to expose such things. But if you give me an answer that says exactly what it is, I have no reason to poke. But if I ask you a question and you refuse to answer, and then you turn the question around and you're attacking me, it means that you don't want to answer that question. Why don't you want to answer that question? It means that there's something you're hiding.
Right.
Just to add to what you just said, of course, I know there are one or two media houses I can just think of on the top of my head that would have that kind of scenario. But the question I'll ask is, when they ask those questions, are they telling a lie? They're not.
They're
So
good.
they're only probing.
They're only
So,
probing.
I mean, different people have different mannerisms of asking questions or getting out your answers. The way Funaya will present a program, it's not the same way you'll present it, or the same way Lois you will present it. So
Yes.
yes, I feel, and of course, anyway, but the question, the bottom line is, was the information truthful? Was it honest? Was it real, irrespective of the delivery? Let's look at the the state governors, because Ajuri also mentioned it, that they will work in synergy with the state governments. I'm expecting, of course, different chief press secretaries of various states will also collaborate with them and, you know, try to get this done. Now, the question is, do we see a lot of information also coming out from the, or should we expect a lot more information coming out from the states? We keep clamoring the federal government, but we forget that the federal government is just like a head. And then the states are different arms and legs and other parts that make this whole entity.
Right.
And we've had instances where, unfortunately, we haven't been able to address or let the citizens actually understand what the state governments are doing, their policies, their plans, their implementations that most people don't know about. So this synergy between the state governments, like Ajuri has proposed, that we should also be monitoring and demanding accountability. So the governor has said, this is what we're going to do, this is what we're going to do.
Yes.
Do you see the media also helping the citizens keep the state governments and state governors on their toe to achieve or deliver the dividends of democracy?
So, you know, earlier you spoke about body language, and we hope that this is able to set the tone for state governors and state governments as well. Because honestly, there's only as much as the federal government can do. The governors are in charge of their states. If anything is not going right in a state, you hold the governor accountable. You don't hold the president accountable, because the Constitution has given the governor every power he or she needs, you know, to make sure that his state works in the right condition. So we hope, we only just hope that with the right body language, and I was talking about the head, if the head sets the right body language, in most times, yes, it would and it should, we hope, you know. So as we're seeing this body language and we're seeing this message from the head, we hope that states are able to replicate this. And another thing, I think this will be a call for us as media people, that we do more. If you see most of our news, most of them is mostly national news. You see quite a lot of more national news.
We're in the FCT.
It's not necessarily because of that. When you look at quite a number of the papers, most stories that make, most papers that make front pages are national news. On few occasions, not like they don't, but on few occasions you see. And when you see news making the front page on papers from states, they are mostly negative news. Have you noticed that?
We are not selling ourselves properly.
We're not selling ourselves
marketing
properly. That's a call to us as media people.
I think it's because of the competition for news that so much is going on in the national. And so when you now put in the states before, good news doesn't sell as much.
Good news sells. Good news. See, we say that it doesn't, but for us in Nigeria now, good news. We need all the good news now. Exactly. It will make us. I have people that say they don't read the news, they don't watch the news because they are tired of bad news. It's depressing.
I agree with you.
You will be surprised the number of people who will pick the paper because there's something controversial, there's something that is not so good about the country. Is less than the people who will pick up and say, okay, the government has reeled out.
Do you understand? If we're beginning to have electricity for 20 hours in a day now, who wants to read that kind of news?
You will be surprised. People will be like, oh, yeah.
I want to strongly agree with you, because the narrative that people sell is the impression that the world has about you. So I truly, truly agree with you. I get the newspaper review every morning, the front pages. And my dad is not in the country, but I forward it to him, because I tell him whatever you read on social media, at least with the guide of this,
you know what is real and what is fake.
So he appreciates it, because it keeps him abreast of what's happening back home. However, now that you've thought of it, I know we've had a conversation here where we've talked about how IMF thinks that Nigeria economy is not so bad. We've had conversations where I was watching some of the 10 busiest airports in the world. Nigeria was part of the airport. And I was shocked. It shows you people coming in and out. It shows economic transactions. Like you pointed out, if you have 20...
sorry to cut you. That IMF story starts was a small.
That's what I'm saying.
Very
So,
small
so
headline.
I truly
It didn't
agree
make
with
a
you,
big
and I
headline.
think that, you know, there's some documentary, some beautiful documentary. It was a TikTok documentary, and some young guy made it, and it was like a little bit of Lagos and showing tourist places in Nigeria, and I'm like, is this my country?
It
Is
is.
this my country? So yes, I think that is something that we as media people too should start. And I don't think it's a Nigerian thing. I think it's an African thing. Let me say this. It's that neo-colonialism. So we feel that, okay, it's only what's Western that is
That's
right or that is good. We're not looking at our home. So like you said, IMF is saying our economy is not that bad. We don't believe it because we're faced with our reality. The World Bank is saying, oh no, we're not so worried about your economy. We don't believe it because what you're saying is 228% inflation rate. But you're not seeing other monies that have been saved, other things. So I think, or do you think, the present administration has a lot to do with changing that narrative of us not selling ourselves, especially as the giant of Africa that we want to be, we are trying to strive to remain as. Shouldn't we start throwing out news that will bring investors? News that is not 20 bandits killed. Oh yes, or 20 people killed. They're news people want to hear. But 300 people are surviving. You know, so should we change the narrative? Should this government also emphasize or enforce us as media practitioners changing the narrative of the negativity we put out there?
Yes. And there's one thing I want to say. There was a story I did, and I was so amazed when I found out about this story in Kaduna State. And the Kaduna State government uses drones to deliver certain medical commodities to hospitals or primary healthcare centers in rural areas.
And
where
we have never heard of this.
I did it on this TV station. I did. And I was so amazed. I was so interesting. I traveled to Kaduna to go do that story, you know, where they deliver medical commodities to primary healthcare centers in places where are not motorable. And when you hear the testimonies of the people in those communities about how healthcare service, healthcare delivery has improved, because just by that one thing, they hardly have out of stock medication. They need medication in the next 30 to 45 minutes. They are there for you. It's almost like, and I was so amazed by that. And then when I was speaking to one of the operators of the place, one of the things he told me is, anytime a journalist says I want to cover this story, I don't have any fear, because I know that what we're doing is right, and what we're doing is top notch.
But you're not even seeing journalists covering that story. So that was
and
a
it's top.
big
But I expect
to
that
you.
Kaduna State government would also do something, because I remember the last time that media took it wide was when it was being launched.
Yes.
But after then, there was no
that.
follow up and all of that. I had the privilege, because I'm from Kaduna State, that I knew about that, and I was like, this would be good if other states could replicate this. We're talking about how our healthcare system is not working right. If we're able to, even though I think Bielsa was supposed to do that, I don't know if they've taken up or not, but if we're able to do that, we would see a significant increase in, you know, health deliverables in our country. Now, the point I'm making is this: it's not just about painting a picture; it's about the picture being real.
Yes, important.
If the government does what is right, naturally stories will begin to come out about what is right. It's just like I said, if in this FCT that we are in, every community for a month experiences at least 20 hours of light, electricity in 1 month, naturally you see stories reeling out talking about that. So it's not just about painting a perception. It's not just about painting a picture.
There has to be a reality.
There has to be a reality attached to it. Once there is a reality attached to it, this back and forth that the media and government are going through would drastically reduce.
I think that's
We're
a good
supposed
place.
to have the documentary reeled out, right? Are we having that? Well, you're also the producer and you're the guest. So
Yes, I think he could pull up
so let's
the
pull
video.
up a video and then see what Ajuri Ngelele has to say about, you know, freedom of speech, the relationship with the media and media houses. So,
most important point I would want to make is that this institution belongs to Nigerians. It does not belong to any political party. It does not belong to any public official. It belongs to over 200 million citizens of this country, both at home and abroad. And it is with that understanding that we will be engaging the world. We believe It is the right, not a privilege, but the right of every Nigerian to have full access into the affairs of the presidential villa, into the affairs of the office of the president and the office of the vice president. We will be more open in terms of providing access to information to radio networks, television networks, newspapers, and online news media than ever before. We are committed to ensuring that there is a zero tolerance policy on every spokesperson and every media functionary that works here in the government in terms of how we relate with Nigerians through the press. Gone forever, by the grace of God, are the days when government spokesmen and women will speak down to Nigerians, would use condescending language with Nigerians, and would display some form of institutional arrogance toward Nigerians. That will not be tolerated under my leadership. I want to be very clear that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is a man of empathy. He is committed to the cause of opening the presidency to Nigerians for the benefit of not just Nigerians, but to the benefit of public office holders, because it is in the interest of public office holders to know that they are being watched so that they can be held accountable to deliver on the promises of the president in terms of the execution of government policy. And we are going to, in very short order, announce a series of very tangible measures that have to do with the opening up of this institution on a daily basis in a deeper and more comprehensive way than has ever been seen before. The last point I want to make is that I have had the privilege of, as I've taken up this appointment, of speaking with my predecessors. I believe in institutional memory. I believe in the importance of relying on the wisdom of those who have come before us. I have spoken with Dr. Ruben Abati, I have spoken with Mr. Femi Adesina, I have spoken with Mr. Segun Adeni, and I will continue to deepen those engagements. And irrespective of political affiliations, all of us love this country, and we're going to do our bit to ensure that the Nigerian media feels that it has its rightful place in the affairs of government, in the affairs of public life, and that our institutions are open for them to deliver right, accurate, and factual information to Nigerians. With that, I thank you very much.
But Lois, before we let you go, because our second guest is standing by, what would be your final summary of this this lovely, because I feel it's a lovely, that's lovely address that Aguri Ngelale made to Nigerian and the media?
Okay, so summary is...
More to Nigerians.
More to Nigerians and media as well, anyways. But yes, you know, we're in a dispensation where we have citizen journalism. That's what happens, you know, when you see what's happening on Twitter. Someone sees something happening, just snap and send, or you make a recording and you send. But just like he said, I would like all citizens to be conscious that even though you're not a professional journalist, you're also doing something that journalists are doing. And it is our responsibility to portray our country in good light. So please, for each and every one of us as citizens, before you send that picture, before you post that video, ask yourself, is this helping in nation building?
Right. Thank you. That's a good way to end up.
I told you it was a mysterious Tuesday. Thank you so much, Lois Abba Sambo, for being with us this morning.
Thank you very much for having me.